3 days after the United States elected its new president, it is still the talk of the town in New York City. They're all upset.
Well, I feel pretty devastated.
This is a real setback for America and the world.
Sad, angry, frustrated.
Anger. And for Trump supporters, some surprise.
I think it's a wonderful thing what happened. The polling was all wrong. They all admitted it. The New York Times made a mistake, and 2 other companies made a mistake, and they thought that Mrs. Clinton would win, and of course you know that she didn't.
The United States has probably just experienced one of the biggest surprises in its political history. On the night of November 8th, the nationwide election day, people gathered at Javits Center in New York, waiting to witness Hillary Clinton shatter the glass ceiling to become the first female president in American history. But the crowd were told they should go home not long after midnight. The glass ceiling was not shattered this day. Steadfast Hillary supporters were left in the hall, disenchanted. Well, dozens of blocks away, at New York Midtown's Hilton Ballroom, Donald Trump delivered his victory speech.
I pledge to every citizen of our land that I will be president for all Americans.
The outcome defied all media predictions. After the result came out, protests erupted in several cities across the country.
We reject the president-elect! We reject the president-elect!
The emotion is especially fierce in New York, a very blue city, where an overwhelming 86% of the votes went to Hillary. It once again raised the question about electoral college.
She needed 270 votes in order to win. It was projected that she might win as many as 320, but in fact she didn't even win 230 as far as the current count goes.
Well, it was a great surprise. Every single major polling prediction was frustrated by the vote count on Tuesday. However, what we saw clearly is that Hillary Clinton failed to motivate her base. She lost every one of the demographics that Barack Obama, that is, she underperformed his results among every demographic that a Democrat needs to go into office. Men, women, college-educated women, blacks, Latinos. That was all surprising. We thought she'd do better with at least some of those constituencies.
Few of the polls before the vote were in Trump's favor. Most of the media did not expect his victory. There was only one extreme narrow path for him to win, which included winning all the battleground states and at least 1 or 2 of the Democratic-leaning states. Yet he was able to pull one of the biggest upsets in recent history, and its aftermath has rippled throughout the U.S. society.
First, our response rates in polls tend to be very, very low. When I first started in the polling business, polling response rates were around 60%, and then they fell to about 40, and then to 20, and now they're around 10% or even less. The advent of telemarketing, phone calls to sell things, has kind of killed off phone polls, but they're even low for other kinds of polls, including internet polls. The second thing is that the coverage, the kinds of people who answer these surveys, may not be the kinds of people who actually vote in an election. Now, it is thought that Mr. Trump was able to mobilize a lot of less affluent and less well-educated white people. Those are the kinds of people who would not tend to answer internet surveys, and they might not even answer phone surveys. And so the polls may have undercounted them. And finally, when analyzing the data, pollsters have quite a lot of discretion about how they're going to establish a cutoff beyond which they predict that somebody's not going to vote at all. And those kinds of rules are somewhat arbitrary, and they might have failed to include people in their final results who ultimately favored Mr. Trump. I think that in a way it reflects the fundamental lack of enthusiasm that Mrs. Clinton inspired among her base. She obviously took quite a lot of heat from Bernie Sanders supporters during the primary season. She was able to bring them into the fold, and Mr. Sanders campaigned hard for her. But at the end, Mrs. Clinton had very unfavorable ratings, the most unfavorable of any Democratic candidate since polls began. And turnout in the country overall, especially among Democrats, was fairly disappointing for Democrats.
The electoral college system is not easily shaken, though, according to Professor Green.
Yes, it is the fifth time now that a candidate has won the popular vote but lost the electoral college. And it is the second time even in recent memory, because of course it happened also in 2000. Now, the country was founded through a compromise between big states and small states, and one of the things that small states got was extra representation in the form of the Electoral College. In order to change the Electoral College, you have to amend the Constitution. And in order to amend the Constitution, you have to have overwhelming votes, not only among the states, but also in the Congress. And there is absolutely no way that one of the parties, which would be disadvantaged by a change in the system, would vote for such a change.
It is settled.
Now, it is no secret that the president-elect and I have some pretty significant differences. But remember, 8 years ago, President Bush and I had some pretty significant differences. But President Bush's team could not have been more professional or more gracious in making sure we had a smooth transition so that we could hit the ground running.
A lot needs to be done for Trump to prove to the U.S. people that he can do the job.
I think that there's reason to be deeply concerned about the possible policy upheavals, but as Mrs. Clinton suggested today, let's give him a chance and see what he does.
America has gone through tons of dark times, through slavery, and every single time it's always been overcome, and I believe that the same will happen.
I don't have a lot of hope for Trump, but I have hope in the American people, and I hope that we can hold him accountable and prevent some of his disastrous policy proposals, and we can work hard as a nation to make the world a better place.
I'm scared, but I think we can get through it.